Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, August 1st, 2018. August, welcome. How are you? I enjoy you. July was okay, but I'm looking forward to August, or, well, not the end of August. The kids in Northern Virginia area go back to school at the end of August, so they're very sad about that, but they're out having a nice summer now. And how about you? Are you on your way to Netroots Nation by some chance? Or perhaps long-term planning? Is that what brings you to New Orleans? I'm not there. I'm not coming. I'll be here, though, broadcasting to you. I'll pretend I'm there. Oh, look, here come some very interesting people that I know only from online who are very nice, and it's nice. I don't know. How do you pretend? You can't simulate an experience like that. If you've never made it, by the way, somehow, to Netroots Nation, but are still listening to the program, I encourage you to think about, well, let's say attending next year. Or if you're the kind of person who can drop everything and jump on a plane and fly to New Orleans, I encourage you to do that. I don't know if there's any hotel rooms available, but they'll find some for you somewhere. And all the excitement will, of course, be going on at the convention center. Watching people arrive via Twitter, just like, I guess now, just like watching presidential speeches or debates. I don't do it. I watch other people do it on Twitter. Same thing for Netroots Nation. I don't go. I watch other people go on Twitter, and it's very exciting. But I miss going. It's been some time since I've been able to get there. And I only realize now in hindsight I would have been able to swing it, although I'm sort of still not really entirely recovered from my last big travel. But I would have been able to put things together to get on a plane and go to New Orleans, I guess. And the kids are in camp this week, and that's my usual excuse lately. I can't make it to Netroots Nation. The kids are out of school for the summer, but I have so much to do to take care of them and get them to their various camps, etc. But this time they're away for camp, and I guess I should have thought that through. However, in the meantime, I guess I'm now reminding myself of what my schedule is. Since not going, I've got things to do, commitments to make on Saturday morning, and that would have been a big problem. Because I would have been away in New Orleans. But those of you who are there or on your way there, I know you're about to have another one of the times of your life. So tell us all about it. Give us updates. Send us, pictures, clips, movies, collages, shadow boxes, whatever you might put together to keep your memories from Netroots Nation 2018. I wish I was there. And as a matter of fact, it costs us Joan this morning. We're sad about that, but we're glad that she's on her way down there. And those of you who are making your way to New Orleans, well, what could be better? You could see Joan in person. And you should tell her that she has to talk to you for an hour just to make up for what you missed on the show today. All right, many directions we could head in. Lots of threads to tug at. I'm going to have to do a little bit of research on my own show and figure out what I told you, what I did get out over the air and what I didn't with respect to the remaking of the Saudi Arabian Peninsula's geopolitical construction. What's been going on with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, that is not to mention Yemen. That is, I'm conscious that I'm not including them, or Oman, for that matter. I'm sorry about that, Oman. And who else am I leaving out? Bahrain, are you out there as well? It doesn't involve everybody. But some major players remaking like I said, the geopolitical construction of the Arabian Peninsula. And in weird ways, and of course participating in all of that, is Jared Kushner, barely, sort of. He's out there, he's involved. But I know I put together for broadcast some pre-recorded material about it while I was off in Iceland, but not all of it made it to the air. And I regret that because, of course, there's new news that I'd like to share with you. And I think we'll hold off. Perhaps maybe Friday we can make it a catch-up. Let's catch up on the Middle East type of story. And that's percolating. But again, something that I want to rush through to the air, but we're not going to get to today. Alex Jones and his wacko cadre are in the news. QAnon back in the morning chatter as well. The crazy conspiracy theory that I don't know if we ever really truly got a handle on what it was they were after or what they believed. And I think it might just be impossible to do. But they showed up, seated up front at the Florida Trump rally, which happened yesterday. You might easily have missed that. I'm glad that the television networks are getting a little less obsessive about covering Trump rallies than they used to be, which is a good development. I'm still not entirely sure where I come down on the coverage of this stuff. I did, I think, retweet this morning. I saw LOL GOP, reminding everybody, hey, what the public really needs to know about Trump rallies is zero, or I'll say close to zero. There are some things you need to know about what goes on there, whereas it might be more effective, for instance, if we knew everything about the Trump-Putin meeting, but we're never going to get that. So you know how these things go. What you really need, you're not going to get, and what you don't need any more of, you're going to get in spades. So anyway, lots to catch up on there. Some new writing that tries to shed a little bit more light on exactly what the hell the QAnon thing is, even if we can't actually explain it. Just what do they say to one another? What's the kind of stupid stuff they believe in? And yet more information coming out on what Maria Butina was up to, and I guess would still be up to, but for the fact that she's in jail. That's good. That's two. Maria Butina and Paul Manafort still rotting away in jail, and I'm enjoying it. Anyway, Greg Dworkin is here. Time to catch up on the news that you might find if you sat down and opened a paper over, say, a nice breakfast or something like that. Good morning, Greg. How are you? Uh-oh.
We are good,
Oh.
and it's the kind of thing you open up over coffee, because
Yes.
coffee is always relevant,
Yes, well, that's true. More relevant on some days than others. Late start for me today, so iced coffee was all I could manage. But, it's summer. It's good.
So, yeah, there's these rallies, and
Yes.
every once in a while cable news will cover at least part of it. And several people could even have been LOL GOP, if not somebody else, pointed out that, you really have to step back and think about these rallies as white supremacist, reunions.
Yeah.
Because that's what they are.
Yes.
And so one of the controversies, if you will, is that at this latest rally, they were doing a reprise of their greatest hits of the campaign. They don't just do a lock her up thing, but they were taunting CNN and giving Jim Acosta a hard time, enemy of the people kind of thing. Mm. And he was lamenting that, it's the kind of thing where, somebody's going to get hurt at these things.
Yeah.
Right?
Sigh.
It's just a sample of the sad scene we faced at the Trump rally in Tampa. I'm very worried the hostility whipped up by Trump and some in conservative media will result in somebody getting hurt. We should not treat our fellow Americans this way. The press is not the enemy. And then he's got some video of some nasty stuff going on there. So I'll give you that tweet for the roundup later. But part of it isn't just that. Other people, this is LA Times, Seema, political writer, says, I've covered presidential candidates in both parties, more Republicans and Democrats. It didn't used to be this way. I'm not asking for sympathy, and every American has a right to agree or disagree. But even at its worst, it wasn't like this. We're just trying to do our jobs. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, the counterpoint to that isn't that it's okay to give them a hard time. It's actually an interesting perspective from Jay Cost, who writes at the Weekly Standard, who says, the First Amendment protects the right of journalists to snark on Twitter about Trump rallies. Mm-hmm. But Trump versus the media is a mutually beneficial relationship. He's reminding us of how we got here. It's a mutually beneficial relationship, my friends. It's been that way for 40 years. The terms of agreement have shifted from Trump gives them scoops to sell papers to both sides give the other an opportunity for moral grandstanding. Now, 2016, refresh my memory, was that back when your network, Jim Acosta, was giving him millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of earned television time? It was all fun and games so long as Hillary was bound to win. Oh, gee whiz. We had no idea this failed casino magnate whom we rehabilitated into a business whiz could parlay his totally unearned media stature into the presidency. Now we must resist for the republic. You want to blame somebody for Trumpism? There's plenty of people. But you should start with the president of CNN Worldwide, who made a pretty penny rebranding Trump for NBC Universal, which is second on the list. And then he goes on to say, when I was a kid, Trump's name was a joke. He was a serial philanderer who went bankrupt building the Taj Mahal in Atlantic City. Had that changed, 2 words, The Apprentice, 2 more words, Jeff Zucker.
Yeah.
Now CNN has the gall to rend its garments and gnash its teeth, shouting, resist. No, sir. I'm old enough to know the true story. You can't con me. You may get to make money facilitating Trump's rise and then piously hope for his downfall, but you won't get my money. Now, it's a, it's point of view. But there's some truth in there.
Yes, that's true, and there's a lot to it. And I the other thing that kind of occurred to me, just watching Jim Acosta, for instance. Now he's the White House reporter, right? See, that's his assignment. It's just, I guess I'm interested in watching White House reporters. Like, I mean, it's late in the game. He's president.
Well, some of them lose it
18
at
months.
times, like Acosta.
Yeah.
Some of them don't.
No,
ever
it's
lose
fine.
It. And pretend it's all normal and nothing's happening, and and that's the other side of the spectrum. And probably both of those are not the right way to approach it.
Well, true. What was interesting to me was it was like I feel like I've heard this story before, and it's because it's interesting. I think we saw it reported by during the campaign, and I think maybe that's part of the problem. I mean, I think Jay Cost has a very good point about where it's coming from the top. But it's interesting that White House reporters are sort of only now coming around to this. But the campaign reporters, it was different people on assignment there. And we forget sometimes, well, they all carry the CNN microphone, and it's a different person. And the campaign people were seeing it up front and in person at a different time. And, of course, they were probably under instructions from their network. Hey, if there's an election looming, you can't be as overt in saying how horrible this is, because then you'll throw the election to one side or the other, and then it
as opposed to subtly throwing the election one side by treating everything as normal, right?
Yes, that's true.
So that's it gets back to Jay Rosen's point about the whole myth of objectivity doesn't exist.
Yes,
because it's just a question of how you decide to hide your subjectivity.
Yes. Well, that is that's true. That's a big part of it. I think switching personnel is possibly a big part of it as well.
Let's talk about NBC, MSNBC, because I'm just more familiar with them. I don't watch as much CNN. Ever since they had Corey Lewandowski on, I don't watch them.
Yes, well, that was downer, wasn't
it? Katie Tur was the reporter assigned to cover the rallies and cover all that stuff, and it got to the point during the campaigns that she felt threatened, that Secret Service had to help protect to get her out of one of the rallies.
Yes.
And it was very scary. She wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
And now she's one of the anchors, and she doesn't go and cover the rally anymore. So there's your change in personnel.
Yeah.
And as an anchor, you get to be more of an opinion writer. And so she's got an opinion about what happened, and it wasn't good.
Yeah.
Whereas, the people who they've got Jeff Bennett now assigned to the White House. And, some of their objective people who go to the press conferences, Haley Jackson, for example, they really struggle with how to handle this. Let's pretend it's normal, but it's not normal.
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, Trump said this, and clearly the White House is trying to show that. But then they'll go ahead and comment on it and say, now they're starting to add all the interesting stuff about, but on the other hand, a lot of what they're saying isn't true. As a matter of fact, there's a story, I'll see if I could find it, which was devoted just to the chyrons.
Yes, I did see that, and I
How the
also
interesting
did not
chyrons are now coming
remember
by
that, but-
where they basically say
Yeah.
Trump says this, but the fact is that. And so right up on the screen, you can read that he's lying.
Yes.
And that's their way of doing it without
That's
saying
good.
he's lying.
I like that, and there's no public face to those chyrons either, and maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. I mean, I guess eventually it'll get away from us, and we'll curse it. But yeah, I did see that. We'll see if we can't dig that story up. It occurs to me too. I mean, the style of these rallies is such that I wonder whether it's a fair editorial decision to send the White House correspondents to cover it. I mean, the same person is there. The president is there, and they're supposed to cover everything the president does. But it might not be a bad idea, given the nature of these rallies in particular. I mean, there's no policy being announced there. It's a campaign rally.
But they do have different people there. I mean, I guess
also
the
have the
hierarchy
campaign
is that
team?
during the campaign, everybody is assigned a chief correspondent, and then whoever wins, that chief correspondent of campaign sometimes goes on to be the chief White House correspondent.
Yes.
But that chief White House correspondent doesn't necessarily then go on to the rallies as president. They send yet another different person there.
Yeah. I'm wondering whether I thought that there's a problem that arises from changing personnel, and it takes them apparently 18 months to get fed up with the horror of it all. But,
Sometimes it's faster, like you send Jacob Soboroff down to the border, and, you get horrified a lot faster than 18
occasionally
months.
It does happen. Yeah, I guess the other side of the coin is I don't know whether it's too normalizing to agree to send the White House press corps to cover what are campaign rallies. And it's usually in a normal presidency, there's some overlap, of course, but they pay much more attention to, making sure that 50% of the trip is official business in some way.
They don't even do that anymore.
No, it's now just, there's no business going on in the White House. So, there's no way you're going to get it 50% official business on a trip. And he just, he takes, these are all pleasure trips for him. So, I don't know how, but again, another area, maybe one of the less consequential areas, but where the press is still behind in figuring out what this guy is up to. He wears suits and he lives in this house, therefore it's serious. No, it's not. He's crazy. What are you doing?
So here's the story from the Washington Post. I'll just add that at the bottom of the list here.
All right.
How chyrons took on a life of their own. In the age of Trump, cable news banners have become a medium for presidential fact-checking.
Yes.
Right?
Sassy, self-aware, and snarky.
Right. German ambassador to U.S. responds to Trump's NATO summit slams, reads the headline on CNN. With friends like these, Trump remarks irksome NATO members, says the banner on Fox News at the same time. The on-screen banners, known as chyrons, were once flat, artless labels. President holds press conference. Fire destroys home. And that was about exciting as an airport arrival and departure board, which I always find interesting if I'm the one traveling. But in an era of shrinking voter-viewer attention spans, chyrons seem almost to have come to life and achieve self-awareness. Now chyrons not only tell viewers what the news is, they tell them what to make of it. They snark, they troll, they correct in real time. For example, MSNBC in January, Trump signs MLK Day proclamation after calling African countries S-holes. Or Trump, I don't support WikiLeaks, parenthesis, he loved it in 2016, and parenthesis, that was CNN. Again, MSNBC, Trump, for the last 17 years, Obamacare has wreaked havoc, parenthesis, law signed in 2010, and parenthesis. So they fact check and they correct, and they're quite useful in doing so because a lot of time the sound is off. And you can't even hear what's going on, like you're in an airport or something like that. And all you can read is the chyrons, so that sometimes is the only news you're getting.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point and a new trend, and I guess the closest that they've figured out to visually to the old snap polls that they used to do, which were always very interesting because they would very often tell you the opposite of what the pollsters and pundits they had hired to tell you what happened.
They stopped doing it.
Yeah, right. As soon as we found out that the truth was something else, they got rid of it.
Right. So this Paul Farhi story in the Washington Post I see at the bottom has a chyron. It says chyron update. Chyrons increasingly used to combat falsehoods, parenthesis, usually in parentheses and parentheses. It's really very
Is
cute.
that what that was? I clicked that off, and I was like, wait a minute, that said Chirons.
It was actually funny. All right, so we have that.
There it is. Okay.
Let's talk about QAnon, because that's one of the things that did happen at the rally, and I think we have, a few minutes before the break just to finish with that.
Yes.
What is QAnon, says the Daily Beast, Will Sommer?
I don't know.
The craziest theory of the Trump era explained.
All right.
It's like a Vox-plainer, except not Vox.
And it doesn't explain anything.
From celebrities to the grassroots, the right is obsessed with the idea that there's a secret conspiracy where Hillary is headed to Gitmo. Here's everything you need to know.
Not just lock her up.
Plotters in the deep state tried to shoot down Air Force One and foil President Trump's North Korea summit, a cabal of global elites, including top figures in Hollywood, the Democratic Party, and the intelligence agencies. I'm surprised they didn't include Dungeons and Dragons here, are responsible for nearly all the evil in the world.
Oh.
There we go. It's the Templars. They've been doing this for like 400 years.
I know. All right, well.
And now Trump is going to fix it all with thousands of sealed indictments, sending the likes of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama straight to Guantanamo Bay. Or at least that's how the world is going for believers of QAnon, the complex pro-Trump conspiracy theory that's starting to have unpredictable effects in real life.
Yes.
The real news can be bad for Trump, but in QAnon world, the president and his supporters are getting sick of winning.
That's where it's happening.
Right. QAnon springs from a series of cryptic clues that started to be posted online in October of 2017, starting on 4chan, of course, before migrating to the even more fringe 8chan.
Right. Look out for 16chan.
We're worried. The anonymous person behind the clues goes by Q, a reference to a high-level government security clearance. I thought it was actually something from Star Trek. Anon and QAnon refers to both Q himself and to Q's nameless supporters, the Anons.
Yes.
Well, Q incel, but they call it QAnon for the purpose of this discussion. Q is supposed to be revealing this top-secret information via the clues, which QAnon fans have dubbed breadcrumbs. They're written in short bursts in a reference-heavy style that's part poem, part ransom note. Here's one example from June. Think SC, vote to confirm, coming, no name action, every dog has its day, enjoy the show.
Oh, that's so meaningful.
No name is Q's nickname for John McCain, and SC is the Supreme Court, and every dog has its day is the kind of cryptic Q remark that spawned a cottage industry of PDFs and 24/7 live streams analyzing it. We're semi-familiar with this whole kind of thinking. There used to be, people who would spend the entire day trying to analyze what Louise Mensch, just tweeted. True. And how that relates to something else, which relates to something else. So we've seen it on the left, but nothing like this.
Yes.
Since Q could be anyone with internet access and working knowledge of conspiracy theories, Louise Mensch is actually a real person. There's no reason to think that Q is a member of the Trump administration rather than, say, a troll or YouTube huckster, or, I would add a Russian, intelligence agent. But incredibly, lots of people believe it. In April, hundreds of QAnon believers staged a march in downtown Washington, D.C. with a vague demand for transparency from the Justice Department. Q shirts have become frequent sites at Trump rallies, and that's where it came up into the discussion yesterday.
Right. With
one QAnon believer scoring VIP access. In June, an armed man in a homemade armored truck shut down a highway near the Hoover Dam and held up signs referencing QAnon, and celebrities like comedian Roseanne Barr and former Red Sox pitcher Curt Schilling, who I will remind you nearly made the Rhode Island government go broke trying to, support his video game business, which went belly up.
Yes.
They've also signed on. And they give examples. So it's unusual, according to University of Miami professor Joseph Usinski, because Usinski. Now, what kind of name is that? That's very suspicious.
Yes. Oh, and U always follows Q in English. I'm just saying. This is the sort of thing that they put together.
Right. Because it offers Republicans an alternate view of the world when they already control nearly the entire government. Usually conspiracy theories are for losers. Normally, you don't expect to win.
But not this one.
Except when they're in trouble. So they're in trouble.
Okay.
Since Q's breadcrumbs are so vague, it's impossible to nail down exactly what the storyline's supposed to be. But the general story outlined in a pro-QAnon video endorsed by Schilling is that every president before Trump was a criminal president in league with all the nefarious groups of conspiracy theories past. global
Yes, of
banking
course.
elite, death squads operating on orders from Hillary Clinton, deep state intelligence, Pizzagate-style pedophile rings.
Oh, yeah.
In an effort to break the cabal's grip, according to Q, the military convinced Trump to run for president.
The military. Yes, we love you, sir.
Now, Trump and his allies in the military are poised to arrest everybody, shipping them all to Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, that may
That's
happen.
a Storm, who claimed Trump referenced it when he referenced the calm before the storm in October.
I see.
Example of, how you lean these conspiracy things from the breadcrumbs.
Right.
Okay? While the storm is at the center of the QAnon narrative, it's also flexible enough to fold in just anything that makes the news. Anything.
Yes.
QAnon fans are obsessed with finding proof that whoever's behind Q is actually connected to the Trump administration. And fans also point to Trump using phrases predicted by Q as proof of the story's legitimacy. I told you, sounds just like Louis Mensch. After one supporter, you see, I told you it was coming. If you go back and read my tweet on, forget about the 9 other tweets that said the opposite. Here's where I predicted this is what's going on.
Yes. Now,
Even when Q's predictions disappoint, the QAnon community keeps going. Q hyped up the release of the Justice Department's Inspector General report on the FBI's Hillary Clinton email investigation, promising it would contain the promised storm of revelations. When it fizzled, Q promised that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein had tampered with the report. Trump had the real report, and the report's release would solve everything. It's amazing that you get this idea that X is going to happen, X doesn't happen, and then you decide, okay, well, there's a reason for it. It was rigged.
Yes.
Never do you say, oh, well, maybe I was wrong. Never do you say, that was kind of stupid when you step back and think about it.
Well, every dog has its day or something. I don't know. You just say things.
Right.
Right. Well, this is the it's familiar to anybody who's ever been confronted with any sort of conspiracy theory. That's a very common problem.
I mean, there are fans of this kind of thing,
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes and trying to decide what every single thing means.
Yes. I don't really know why they love this one so much. Although the part about shooting down Air Force One is fun. We'll be right back after 2 minutes. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring, monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And Greg Dworkin's still with us. When we left off, we were discussing how crazy QAnon was, and now we will continue discussing how crazy QAnon is, and maybe some other things too.
Maybe. Let's do some other things. Let's talk about the even worse real-life stuff. Because QAnon is dumb, but real in the sense that there are people who believe it and go to rallies and sell T-shirts and so on and so forth. So you should at least be familiar with it. And Ashley Parker is a very good reporter.
All right.
I believe for the Washington Post said, what is this QAnon stuff? I'm at this rally and I don't get it. I see all these shirts and I don't know what's going on. Okay. And I'm sure she's an expert by this morning.
Yeah, I guess so. I saw J.J. McNabb tweeting this morning and retweeted it for her because I agree with the sentiment that you guys who are at these rallies, if you're going to be, whoever you are getting assigned to cover the rallies for the networks, you guys really have to get up to speed on the QAnon thing. It's not on your radar, but you're on their radar, so you better figure out what this is all about. It's one thing, one part of the story to sort of pan the crowd with your phone and say, look how angry these people are and how this is going to result in some violence. You're absolutely right, and you don't know how right you are because you're missing half the picture because you're focused on stuff that people in suits normally do.
Right,
As you
but you
should
have
be,
to focus
but
on
that's
stuff
when
that
things
people
are
like
normal.
J.J. McNabb does, like 3%ers and
Yes.
oath, keepers and stuff. You got to
should
get
mix them all
up
together.
to speed
Oath
on all of that
percenters
because
and-
those are the kinds of folks that go to these rallies.
Yeah, that's who you're looking at. And, I mean, to the extent that you think they're the story, wouldn't you like to know? Don't you think you should know something about what they do when they leave these rallies? Because it doesn't go away. They don't go back to, not all of them go back to real life and back to work. A lot of them.
Some of them block the road at Hoover Dam,
Yeah.
So let's see
might
what that's
shoot
about.
you.
But the real life stuff's even worse. So when I say real life, let me just read you a couple of headlines here. This is from the Washington Post. Trump administration must stop giving psychotropic drugs to migrant children without consent. Judge rules.
That would be a good idea. They should do that.
Right. This is from ABC News. Senators demand answers from immigration officials on family reunification. And Mana Yagani tweets this story that a child died in ICE custody in Dilley, Texas. The child died following her stay at an ICE detention center as a result of possible negligent care and a respiratory illness she contracted from one of the other children. And so when the pediatricians tweet that what they are doing is abuse and neglect, they're actually using technical terms. And as is unfortunately too often the case, abuse and neglect can result in death.
Yes.
And so, I think this is a whole lot worse than the QAnon conspiracy stuff. Yep. And, you should be covering this stuff too, media. Noah Rothman tweets, knowingly inflict psychological trauma on children and then forcibly medicate them when that trauma manifests in outbursts.
Yeah.
And I pointed out, referencing the Mani Yagani story about the child dying, it's crazy to do that.
It is.
It's cheaper to kill him.
It's an unbelievable situation still, of course, and one of the more disturbing aspects of it, besides what's actually happening to the kids, I mean, if you can't handle that, I mean, there's a lot of people who really can't. I mean,
you can't handle it.
Come like trigger warning for some people.
You want me on that wall,
but
which is made out of building blocks built by Ron DeSantis' son, who's running for Florida governor.
Good news.
Did you see that commercial?
I did. Bits and pieces of it. I didn't sit through the entirety of it, but I got a good description. It's just so amazing,
this entire election.
Yeah.
The Democrats are talking about policy.
Yes.
And the Republicans are talking about how close they suck up to Trump.
That is true. And the newspapers.
That is the election in a nutshell coming in November. Folks, you have a choice.
Yeah. However, the newspapers are instead, they're seeing the two and then writing about how Democrats can't just be anti-Trump and they really have to step up the policy game.
And
we're also in disarray.
Is that what they're saying?
They don't necessarily say that.
You can't just be anti-Trump. You have to
be
pro-Trump,
a little bit
pro-Trump
pro-Trump.
And balance it.
Yeah, right. I'm somewhat for the hair, but somewhat against the skin. I don't know how you would divide things up. But there are people out there who are the Republican candidate for governor is just running on, I don't know. Who cares? I just love Trump. And
Chris Hayes had something that was like, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was along the lines of, look, I mean, we have to be a little bit more respectful of each other. We have people who think that taking children away from parents and having them die is bad. And then we have people who think that taking children away from their parents and having them die is good. Yeah. And we should respect each other and just have a nice dialogue.
Right. And the only reasonable position is that it's meh or possibly okay to take kids.
It's okay if it happens sometimes. I mean, you got to take the middle position because everybody's got to be a centrist. It's the only right way.
That's that's the way it is. The other troubling aspect of the story I was trying to get out, and then I got lost in my own thoughts, is one of the more disturbing parts was, this is the sort of thing you see. It's been challenged in court. I mean, the headline of the last couple of days has been, look, there's a deadline. The courts have imposed a deadline for the Trump administration. You've got to reunite these families by X date. And you're watching it play out in real time. I mean, this does sometimes happen in other issues, but in this one where it's like literally life and death and the future of these children, if they even survive this ordeal, it hangs in the balance. They're just not doing it. And the courts are sitting there, I guess for the first time, some of these officers of the court realizing there's a presidential administration in place that just doesn't, that treats us the way that Trump treated his civil lawsuits. If I make the deadline, I make the you know what? What are they going to do about it? They're going to arrest the president? Just just bide your time. Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. And there's really not much recourse. This is where you begin to realize the limitations of the court's power if there's an administration that just doesn't care about maintaining the rule of law and the integrity of the courts.
Speaking of court power, good thing happened in Michigan. The Michigan Supreme Court ruled for voters, not politicians. Redistricting commission proposal can appear on November ballot. It's an let me get this right, gerrymandering proposal that the public gets to vote on.
Ah, yes. Gerrymandering. Thank you for reminding us.
Well, his name was Gary, so we call it gerrymandering and always will, but,
It's pronounced GIF.
GIF, exactly. The one piece, I have a couple in the pundit roundup that are of interest. The wave that's building for November may not be blue so much as pink, and it's all about how women are at the center of it. There is making fun of John McNaughton, the guy who does the ridiculous Norman Rockwell, but way, way worse paintings.
Yes.
Right? He's painted
serious.
A new one, crossing the swamp with Trump looking like Washington, holding up a lantern as the boat rows across the swamp. The funny thing is, right next to him, I don't know if you've seen it, but sitting right next to him is Ben Carson. And if you look at the picture, and I'll send it to you so you can, Carson is rowing the wrong way.
Oh, well.
So I just sent that to you so you can take a look. He's right at Trump's knee, and it's really quite funny. So we have that one. We have Catherine Rampell writing in the Washington Post, a winning theme for Democrats, kids. We were just talking about that. The people who get really upset about the stuff I was reading about in terms of the immigrant kids are moms. And they're really, really upset, which is part of that pink wave thing.
Ah, okay. Well, there are always a demographic time bomb. Write your book about moms.
Drew Altman points out that the healthcare surge in polling is significant, and it's rising as a midterm issue, and discusses why. Latino Decisions talks about Latino voters turning angry and turning anger into action. Latino voters' emotional reactions to Trump presidency, according to this poll, 72% angry, 70% feel they're disrespected, and 64 feel ashamed. So they want to take action about that. And those are all important stories. But the one I want to talk about is Murray Wass in the New York Review of Books.
Murray. Yes.
Murray.
That's on my list. So why don't you take care of that? It's true. It's a good one. It's huge.
Comey and Mueller, what Trump knew and when he knew it.
You think you already know what he knew and when he knew it, but this is a new angle.
There's more. There's more. I can read this for you. It's very detailed. It's rather long. But the big paragraph here that I pulled out was previously undisclosed evidence in the possession of Special Counsel Robert Mueller, who I will remind everybody knows more than we do about this, including highly confidential White House records and testimony by some of President Trump's own top aides, provide some of the strongest evidence to date implicating the President of the United States in an obstruction of justice. Several people who have reviewed a portion of this evidence say that based on what they know, they believe it now all but inevitable that the special counsel will complete a confidential report representing evidence that President Trump violated the law. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who oversees the special counsel's work, would then decide on turning over that report to Congress for the House of Representatives to consider whether to instigate impeachment proceedings. That's pretty significant, and that's not a conspiracy.
No, it is. It's fairly significant, no doubt about it. And there's a lot more, I think, than meets the eye in this report, and the minimum, at a minimum, you take away from it, it looks very likely that this, whether it's in his third wave, where there's a fourth wave of indictments, complaints, reports, whatever filed, or whether Mueller does the filing himself or simply turns it over, there's going to be a conclusion to this that implicates Trump directly. And just depends on what he thinks he can, what charge he can.
Right. Well, Trump basically lied when he said he didn't know anything about Flynn.
Yeah.
Because this report goes on to say that there's confidential White House memoranda in the special counsel's possession, explicitly stating when Trump pressured Comey to leave Flynn alone,
Yeah.
He had just been told by two of his top aides, Reince Priebus and Don McGahn, so they named names, that Flynn was under criminal investigation. So Trump knew, just as Trump knew, that the Russians had interfered with the election more than meddling. Right after he was elected, before he took office, because he was told by the intelligence agencies. So all of the denials since then about both topics have been complete and total lies. Fiction.
Yes, absolutely appears to be the case, and there's a bit more to it. I know you mentioned in it, but and it becomes clear in this article. Not only is there now evidence in Mueller's possession that two top White House aides have said outright, look, I know that the president knew that there was an investigation ongoing when he started pressuring Comey because I told him that there was one. And in addition, and I can't remember explicitly whether it was mentioned or not, wheels started turning as he started talking about it. There were others in the White House who told Mueller's investigators that there was no way he could have known it, and so therefore there's no way you can charge him with obstruction. The whole premise of their defense was
That's
can't
what inspired
be
lawyers in.
Yeah. So now
There's
they're
no longer
gone, and that was a lie. And it's not just any obstruction of justice either. I mean, that's always a bad thing, and we realize it's a serious issue. And of course, it was something that they charged. Or that was behind the Bill Clinton impeachment as well, lying to investigators and therefore obstructing justice. But again, at the bottom, no one needs really, I don't think, at this point to be reminded what was at the bottom of Bill Clinton's obstruction of justice. What sort of investigation was it that he was thwarting? It was about his personal. Well, I don't want to dismiss it as personal peccadillos because, of course, it involves all sorts of issues of sexual harassment and all sorts of, I guess, toxic masculinity that goes along with it. And we know that's a big problem. But that still doesn't measure up to the same thing as, remember what he's lying about here is he says he didn't know about the investigation, but he did. And that his lawyers went to the investigators and said, you can't charge him with obstruction. And the obstruction was, I have just placed a Russian paid spy in the White House as my national security advisor, and I want you to stop investigating that so that he can continue to be my national security advisor. It's more, what kind of justice was he obstructing? He's obstructing essentially a treason investigation. And
right, because Flynn was talking to Ambassador Kislyak about removal of sanctions.
Right, and a number of other things.
Which, by the way, is the quid pro quo for what does Russia want from Trump and why do they want him elected?
All along, and he was getting ready to pay off on that quid pro quo when the FBI and Sally Quinn came Sally Yates. Sally Quinn was probably saying it too, right? Except she said, oh dear, something really unusual is happening at the etiquette cotillion. But Sally Yates warning him that the guy was highly suspect, that he was a spy essentially, and really this is something they had known for some time since he was illegally installing internet connections in his office as Defense Intelligence Agency director. He's got a long history of it. He's been paid by the Russians. He shows up at the RT dinner and sits next to Putin. He's also in the employ of the Turkish government as well. It was an extraordinarily dangerous situation that essentially rises right up to the level of treason, and Trump was lying about it and instructing others to lie about it on his behalf. For those of you who are purists and won't use the T word, there's your overt act, and I'll tell you who your two witnesses are. It's right here in your memo, Reince Priebus. Right.
And there's others. There's like at least 5 people who will testify and maybe have testified already to Mueller about this.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty clear timeline.
Capital crime. I can't help you.
Yep. And, the weird thing is, again, the very same news reporters who cover the rallies say, well, there's Giuliani on TV trying to obscure things, and look how effective he is at obscuring things because I listen to him and I don't understand a word he says.
Yes, there you go.
And
Good
that's not really accurate analysis.
Oh.
Mueller has these memos. He's got a clear timeline. It's not fuzzy. It's not blurry like, Bigfoot.
Oh, I know that guy.
It's perfectly clear. And so what happens after that? And that's why, what happens with Mueller is such a big deal. And as we saw earlier in the week when we looked at CBS polling, we know that half of the Republicans want to wait and see what the facts are before they decide and make up their mind about what they want to do about the Mueller investigation. Well, these are the kind of facts that come out. It's pretty clear. And so I'm not saying every one of them will therefore break with Trump, but a whole bunch of them will, and he's already unpopular. So, what does that do? It's going to sink the Republicans in November is what it's going to do.
Okay, though I can't wait.
But you have to. Anyway, so that's my summary for today. A bunch of good stories, but that particular Murray lost one I thought was well worth highlighting. And with that, I'll leave you for today, but I'll be back tomorrow. I'm writing the Pundit Roundup for tomorrow as well because Tim Lang, Meteor Blades, is on vacation. So maybe we'll have some more stories to talk about. With that, This is Greg Dorkman speaking with my friend David Waldman, Kagro in the Morning, who's got a whole show left and is without Joan, so he's on his own. Sorry.
I may. It looks like I might get a half hour out of Armando for Armando fans. Although I would hasten to point out, I'm probably wrong about the half hour.
Any topic? What's he going to talk about?
Yes, the topic is the one that he sent us a note about on Skype and said this would be a great article to discuss, and that we ignored and didn't discuss.
I didn't see it.
I know, and we wouldn't.
I was too busy talking to you and reading the Murray Wass article.
We weren't able to fit it in anyway, and but you'll like it. It's the one about the
is it about
UVA. The UVA history professors who resigned from their additional positions down at UVA because of the hiring of a former Trump administration official, but a very particular Trump administration official, Mark Short.
That sounds good. A very particular one.
Yes.
That's well worth going over. So I hope you do.
I hope so too.
Anyway, say hi, and I'll be back tomorrow. And
all right, very good. Thanks very much, Greg. We'll see you tomorrow, I'll see your name. We'll hear your voice. All right, excellent. Thanks so much. Yes. Hey, so Armando, I don't know if you want to wait until the 10 o'clock hour or not. You're certainly welcome to chime right in and then take it up to the break and then over the break. We got a ways to go even. Still a good, 8-10 minutes before the break if you want to start right in. If not, plenty to talk about. No problem. Just give me don't even give me some indication. Don't give me a heads up. Just call when you're ready. In the meantime, we will take a look at some of the comments that came in. Oh, there we go. There's the answer. Now I just got to wait until my main computer decides to allow me to... Oh, no. We're going to have to try that one again. All right. The main computer didn't want to ring. Now, I didn't just shut off Skype, did I? Let's see if we can try that again. Or maybe I should call him, but... here we go. Hold on a second, Armando. This is real interesting. All right, can I make this... Why won't my other Skype register this? Let's try this way. Okay, this is very odd, and I'm having difficulty making Skype work, but maybe I can call Armando. Let's try it that way. There we go, and there's our cool music. There we go, Armando. Hi, how you doing? Are you there?
Hold on.
Okay.
I gotta turn my thing off.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, something strange going on today for whatever reason. Although I had some difficulty yesterday. We'll have to tinker with the system a little bit and make sure everything's working just fine. But at least we got you on now. Man.
Do you hear that? Do you hear that echo?
I'm listening. Let's see. No, I don't. You do?
Yeah,
you hear something?
Must be mine. I thought I had.
Yeah, something odd is happening, but okay. No echo on the side that I can.
Can you do me a favor and
Yeah.
call me back? Because that echo's going to bother me.
Okay, we'll try it again. Why don't they ask me to rank that call? How was that call? Oh, it was twice as good as normal. Let's see, echoing. Let's see, anything else that I should be fiddling with on this end? I can't see anything. All right, we'll try one more time. And give it a call. Doo-doo-doo. Oh, a different kind of sound this time. Interesting. Is it indicative of some kind of terrible trouble? One ping only. Okay, there's the ping. Oh, look at this now. There we go. Let's see. Is this any better, Armando? It's making some interesting noises for our computer. Anyway, okay.
No, it was me. It was coming from mine because I was listening, and apparently, normally the new sound just overlaps, and it doesn't. I can't hear anything else that was playing, but I was hearing it, I think.
Well, it made some interesting noises on our end, and we
worked out the technical kinks before the break, so that's good.
We shut it off and then we turn it back on again. That's how we're working out the kinks. Okay, so you have sent me this story that I noticed making the rounds the other day because it's down at UVA, and so I'll set up the story by reading at least part of it here. The headline in the Washington Post: "We quit our UVA History Center because it hired an enabler of Trump's anti-truth." I've seen this story percolating up, and I guess now they're explaining themselves. Two history professors say studying this presidency will be hard enough without Mark Short's help. And this is great because it explains there's more going on here than just saying, oh, I won't work alongside a member of the Trump administration, or we hate Trump, or why do all these people who enabled such horrible things get to land on their feet and get highly paid positions? They're making, it seems, from the headline anyway, and I bet we'll discover in the body of the piece here, these are history professors working at a institution within the institution here. A UVA's like a sort of a center for the study of the presidency. The Miller Center is what it's called, and I will get a good description, I think, of exactly what they do there. But a good point being made here. You normally when things are normal, you would want to help document the history of a certain presidency by it would be a good idea to hire someone who was inside and saw what was going on and could help you get real and serious insight into the history of this administration. Of course, what's happening here is you got a lying administration. I mean, way beyond what normal administrations do in lying about themselves or putting a shine on their own legacy. But this is somebody who's been skilled in and helpful in helping formulate obvious lies on behalf of the administration to justify policies that otherwise make no sense and really still make no sense no matter what the explanation is. And who, of course, an administration that may itself be illegitimate as well, but that doesn't even really necessarily enter into it. You can't study the history of an administration by bringing on one of the people who helped orchestrate the obfuscation of that administration's true history and think you're going to come away with a real history of what happened here. They make an excellent point. So,
it seems so obvious and basic, but that seemed to escape anybody who was discussing this. Yeah. I thought it was a very timely op-ed, and you should read portions of it.
Let's begin going through it.
I think it's very well argued.
This is William Hitchcock and Melvin Leffler, the professors in question, writing their own piece here. Two history professors say studying the presidency will be hard enough, this presidency, hard enough without Mark Short's help, and they should have put that perhaps in scare quotes. Hiring Mark Short, who, by the way, if you wanted to look him up on the interwebs, M-A-R-C, Short, the former White House legislative director, to help scholars understand the Trump presidency is like welcoming H.R. Haldeman into your university at the height of the Watergate controversy and asking him for insights into Nixon. That's as clear as day. Sure, he knows a thing or two, but is he a trustworthy guide? On Monday, we resigned our faculty positions at the Miller Center, not at the University of Virginia. If you've got kids there studying history with them, they're still there to help you. But at the Miller Center, a small but influential public affairs research organization at the University of Virginia, and they resigned in protest over its decision to offer a paid senior fellowship to Short. The Miller Center is a nonpartisan affiliate of UVA that houses some 24 scholars of presidential history and occasionally awards temporary appointments to former government officials. So why the fuss about Short?
Wait, let's stop that 1 second because it's important to distinguish between inviting him to speak versus giving him a paid academic position.
Yes, there's often controversies about campus speakers these days, and people, unfortunately, both left and right, occasionally get up in arms about these. Well, we ought to have, we need our universities and campuses to be marketplaces of ideas. That is actually a different question than should this person be. I have a lot of thoughts
on that question, but I think it would muddy the water right here.
Yes.
This was not just him coming to speak. This was, you're paid to be an academic and engage in the pursuit of truth.
Yes, and at a state institution, no less, and so taxpayers supported. Taxpayer dollars going to this, not to mention tuition dollars, but okay. So why all the fuss about Short, I guess, in particular? Shouldn't we be welcoming a Trump official into our ranks? Aren't we professionally obligated to talk to both sides, as they enclose that in quotes? Our decision was a painful one and had nothing to do with unwillingness to engage with policymakers with whom we disagree.
Can I remind you, you're near the break, and
true.
Why they are making that decision. This would probably be a good point to hold on the article.
Okay, well, that's a good idea. And so we'll just set it up by saying, okay, we'll read that one line to you, that the decision was a painful one. True, they acknowledge this. And that it has nothing to do, as they say, with an unwillingness to engage with policymakers with whom we disagree. And as we hinted just a few minutes ago, I think what we'll discover on the other side is it has to do with the ability to do our jobs, to accurately and soberly reflect on the true history of this administration. And this guy's job for the past year and a half has been to obfuscate that truth. We can't have this guy around us. It won't work. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Still got me, you still got Armando here on the other side of the break. We left off in the middle of the beginning of our reading of William Hitchcock and Melvin Leffler's article, their op-ed in the Washington Post, why they resigned from the Miller Center positions at the UVA, at the UVA's Miller Center for the study of the presidency. Over the hiring of Mark Short. And I suspect they will get right into it right here, right now, as we get to this important paragraph. And I suspect that this will explain a lot about what they did and be applicable to a much broader part of our public discourse than just what's going on here. As we left off, it was their assertion that the decision, a painful one, had nothing to do with the unwillingness to, any unwillingness to engage with policymakers with whom we disagree. We've spent our careers studying controversial decisions and controversial people. As sponsors of conferences and lectures, we have always invited those differing opinions from across the political spectrum. So as you were saying earlier, when it comes to simply inviting people to speak on campus that they disagree with, or even think are horrible people, this is something they've done all along. This is not what's going on here. This is a paid position, and even beyond that, it simply makes it impossible, I think, for them to do their jobs. We have worked with former Ambassador Eric Edelman, who advised Dick Cheney on national security, as well as Melody Barnes, a leading domestic policy advisor to Barack Obama. Wouldn't necessarily say they were the most controversial people in the world, but the Mark Short decision was different from previous appointments, even actual appointments at the center, because Donald Trump is different from previous presidents. The Trump presidency has taken the country into uncharted waters, and it has presented an especially tough challenge for scholars. by breaking the norms of presidential behavior, by upending the rules of civil discourse, by casting doubt on the meaning of truth, and by embracing the rhetoric of racism and white supremacy, Trump has departed sharply from recent historical precedents. That's understating the case. Ruptures in history are precisely what scholars like to study. That is our sweet spot. And we'll be studying the Trump effect for decades to come. Certainly, historians will disagree on the origins of Trump's brand of populism, reasons for his political success, and the consequences of his vulgar rhetoric. We look forward to having such arguments. But academic inquiry adheres to certain rules. Scholars, which is what they're proposing to hire Mark Short as, scholars are required to use and respect evidence and to follow that evidence even if it reveals unpalatable insights. That is, we are professionally required to keep an open mind. So don't you worry about that being the problem. We are professionally required to keep an open mind and let the evidence guide us. Can Short abide by these ground rules? Is he the right person to invite into this process of scholarly reflection and analysis? His public record suggests he is not. He may make a fine witness in assembling a narrative about this thing, I would add, but as a scholar conducting the inquiry, no, that's just it's just what embedding a propagandist among the umpires here. It doesn't make any sense.
He has no credentials for the position.
Well, that's true. I mean, certainly not for the position of a scholar helping to guide the inquiry. I mean, there's room. I would think in the past, probably they've done this, where you get somebody who doesn't have academic credentials to add to the actual inquiry, but you bring somebody on as essentially a paid testifying witness. Just so long as you tell us what really happened inside the administration, and we can analyze that, and you can probably help us to do that. But what we're hiring here is somebody whose job it was to make sure to come up with a story that didn't necessarily have lies. Yeah, that had nothing to do with the truth. To make the administration look good. He can't tell you what the administration was really thinking because he doesn't know. It doesn't. It never mattered to him what they wanted. He knows they were
lying, and he knows that he
that's
enabled the lying, and he engaged in lying himself.
Now, if he were willing to come on and document
the H.R. Haldeman comparison is fantastic. It's like, yes, Haldeman's going to tell you the truth about Watergate.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying Short was involved in any of that because I don't think he was. But he was involved in many things that were just filled with lies.
It's open to question whether he knows the true story of anything.
No. Yeah,
except that he lied. I helped lie. That I can tell you for sure.
Right. Example. This morning, Trump again calls on Sessions to fire Mueller or to end the witch hunt, as he says.
Okay.
What's Mark Short going to say about that? Here are facts.
Yeah.
There are rules in the Justice Department for when the Attorney General and any subordinates have to recuse themselves. Those rules were applied by the people who were charged with making that recommendation. They told Sessions, look, you worked in the campaign. You've got a conflict. You should recuse from this.
Yeah.
Sessions, to his credit, took their advice. The President of the United States is saying, forget about that. Forget about those rules. You should go in and fire Mueller.
Yeah.
What is Mark Short going to say about that? Is he going to say, yeah, that's just like, which it is, when Nixon told Elliot Richardson to fire Archibald Cox? Because it is. It's exactly like that.
Yeah. So open question. Will your new presidential scholar say that, or will he say, no, it's completely different and the president was absolutely justified in saying so, like he does when he goes on television or speaks to anybody else? It may be open to question, like, okay, well, when he was working for Trump, clearly he did say such things, but now he's not working for Trump, so he'll switch and tell us, no, he was absolutely wrong, or what? And I mean, while it's great, I guess you could save things by saying, well, there's a possibility that he might change his mind. Okay, well, when it's a coin toss as to whether or not he'll change his mind, then fine, hire him to make sandwiches at Subway, and maybe while he's doing that, he'll tell you the truth about the administration. High-paid job at the Miller Center where the whole premise is that you will tell us, and we know you will because you're a serious academic. Well, no, you can't have that job. I don't think we should have a 50% or less possibility of getting the benefit of the bargain from hiring you and then find out later, yes, no, maybe.
No, it's just that he never told the truth when he was in the Trump administration. Up to 2 days ago or the day before he resigned, he was lying on a daily basis. Not just fudging, not just, doing the typical spinning. He flat out lied.
And there's more on his history in here too.
Yeah, go ahead.
It'll help us. Maybe I will continue so we can. This will help make the point and in more concise fashion. Can Short abide by these ground rules? We were wondering, right? Or they were wondering. Is he the right person to invite into this process of scholarly reflection and analysis? His public record suggests that he is not. So let's take a look at that. He has been a profoundly partisan operative for his entire professional career, so the suggestion that he might change his stripes is perhaps more than just suspect. His early mentor was Oliver North. That's not going to help. A man who was engaged in illegal covert actions and who directly and knowingly contravened congressional legislation. And by the way, in his post-Reagan life has showed no contrition about that whatsoever and has in fact been dining out on it ever since. So no likelihood that he's learned any lessons from him. Short also worked for the Koch brothers Freedom Partners Fund, an organization that prides itself on the surreptitious funneling of dark money to right-wing causes. This is hardly the resume of a man devoted to dispassionate reflection. In his recent work in the White House, Short has associated himself with ongoing attacks on the free media. He's associated himself with rhetoric and policies that have empowered and emboldened white supremacists and that have led to spectacular increases in racist and misogynistic talk and behavior in this country. And maybe UVA and Charlottesville, Virginia is not the place to let this guy land.
And they make that
right
point,
now,
of course, too, because Short had a terrible moment in the Charlottesville thing.
Right. He has been a visible and active spokesman for an administration that has undermined the FBI and our intelligence agencies, that has tried to disenfranchise millions of voters, and that has separated asylum-seeking mothers from their children. We do not assert that service in the Trump administration is a bar to a fellowship in our university. But there should be some basic criteria, including a record of distinguished public service or some academic credentials. H.R. McMaster, the former National Security Advisor, holds a Ph.D. and has written a highly regarded book about civil-military relations. Ambassador Nikki Haley has a long career in elected office, and as governor, she was noted for removing the Confederate battle flag from the grounds of the South Carolina Capitol. These officials have demonstrated independence and integrity even while serving. I mean, that's generous.
What I'm saying, I understand their point.
Yeah, well, they're being academic about it.
They are at least within the realm of we can discuss it. Short is somewhere else.
Yes, and so this sort of is set up. This is offered up to, I guess, offer their credentials in being open-minded and academic in their pursuit of the truth here. And we can work with certain of them. These officials, they say, have demonstrated independence and integrity even while serving in this truth-challenged administration. Short, by contrast, has no record of scholarship to recommend him, nor has he demonstrated independence from Trump. Instead, he has been a loyal mouthpiece, merely echoing the president in his many public appearances.
And in his many lies.
Yep.
He has not respected the truth at all as a public official.
One such regrettable example, and here it is, we hinted at earlier, came soon after the neo-Nazi rally in our hometown, Charlottesville, last August. After Trump made his infamous remark condemning both sides in clashes between the marchers and counter-protesters, remember, very fine people on both sides, Short quickly reinforced this message, applauding the president for his clear and outspoken denunciation of the violence. A statement that clearly twisted the truth. There was no clear and outspoken denunciation of the violence. They thought they were fine people. But the issue at stake is larger than Short, who is just a foot soldier in this destructive presidency, which likewise, by the way, I would add, suggests that he's a bad match for the job. Why would you want just a foot soldier in any presidency, destructive or otherwise? The problem here is whether the authority and legitimacy of the academy and the search for the truth on which it depends can survive the Trump presidency. Our commitment to evidence, civil discourse, reason, and logic. These values are under siege from forces we do not fully understand and require far more urgent study. Rather than curry favor with an administration or with administration officials like Short, we should be applying the standards of rigorous and impartial analysis to them. That means rejecting Trump's claims of fake news, his falsifications of history, and his dog whistle praise for alt-right thugs who unfurled flags of hate in our hometown. In the university world, we insist on the primacy of evidence, reason, judgment, and facts. We refuse to reward and honor people who spent their time in public service working only to elide the truth, to bend facts, to serve partisan purposes, to mock the free press, and to scorn the very act of free thinking. To treat Mark Short as a trusted colleague in the pursuit of objective analysis would be a surrender to the forces of unreason and obfuscation that have fed the Trump presidency. That's their conclusion. I think it's about as strongly as you can state it for academics. But yeah, it just poses another one of those weird puzzles. As I said, this is broadly applicable even beyond this particular case. It gets back to the same problem we see in all aspects, really, of dealing with this and some previous administrations, too, that just putting on a suit and occupying an office that we've had to, thanks to the Electoral College, throw up our hands and say, I don't know what the mechanism is to prevent this person from occupying this office, but something tells me that this is wrong. But in the meantime, I guess we'll play along and see if we fall apart at any point. And you put on a suit and go to work and do the things that this idiot president asks you to do and then finally resign. And it really hasn't been very long. I mean, I think he's maybe not a great choice for the job just for the fact that, look, if you're out of the administration at this point, you've been in your job for 10 minutes. You're not a long-time expert on anything. He's got a longer history than just Trump administration, but still.
Yeah, I'll go with all that. He's unqualified. He has no academic qualifications. He has no track record of integrity. And frankly, as you say, it's not like he was an important player in there that you could say, well, yeah. But maybe we'll get something good out of him. He's some bit player.
I mean, he was what, the legislative
he was the White
liaison?
House domestic policy advisor or director or whatever the hell that is. He was John Ehrlich.
I guess.
To continue the Watergate analogy. In theory, I guess you could say he was involved in, well, actually, what were the domestic policy initiatives of the Trump administration? We know about the immigration.
Yeah, the only ones that actually made it through would be the tax cuts, I guess.
And I don't think that was him. That was the Gary Cohn and those people. Really, it was the Congress who did it. Trump just signed it.
I mean, it might be useful to ask him some questions about the relations between the legislative and executive branches during his tenure.
He was more of a lobbyist with the Congress people. That was really his job more than anything else. But, he'd go out there and they'd trot him out to lie on occasion for Trump. And, of course, most famously for the Charlottesville thing. But the thing that I just put it to you again, Mark Short, is going to say what about the president today calling on his attorney general to violate the Department of Justice rules on recusal, which were properly applied, and fire the Mueller investigation and fire Robert Mueller. What's Mark Short going to say about that? That's one example, because there's 8,000 of them. The guy lies 20 times a day about everything.
Yeah.
You can't normalize these people by saying, yeah, I get all that, but we're going to put you on what we're claiming is an academic pursuit. If you're not an academic pursuit and you're just, well, one of these stupid think tanks, Brookings Institution or American Enterprise Institute, because those are jokes now.
I mean,
nobody takes them as serious pursuit of anything. It's all just politics. Let them go to that. Sure. Don't put him at the University of Virginia, one of the finest universities in the country.
Yeah.
And what people want to think is a very serious academic center called the Miller Center. If you're going to be that, well, then you're not an academic anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
It endangers the integrity of the institution, which I guess is why they said, well, if you're not going to get rid of them, then I can't be associated with this institution's inquiries because it's not academic. So I'm resigning. It's painful because it used to be an academic institution and a valuable credential to be associated with it. Now it is not. So, I mean, in the sense that it's gone, that's
they
painful.
Invited Mark Short.
Right.
Oh, you're that. And this actually goes to a point about how to deal with this as a populace, as people who worry about these things. Public shaming is important.
Yeah.
When you say, I don't want to serve you to Sarah Sanders, that's what we have. So, no, we're not acting like this is all okay. It's not okay. You'll get a meal somewhere else, and you're not going to starve, and your life's not going to end. But we're not going to treat you as some respected person. We don't respect you. We don't respect what you do. That's what we can do. We can't put people in jail for their points of view, nor do we want to. We're not going to engage in violence like the Trump people threatened the media last night. That's not what we're going to do. We're just not going to go along in the ways that are acceptable in our society, which is, oh, you're going to be invited to this center? Well, I'm resigning from it because you're not worthy of it. You're not worthy of that respect.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully these guys are in a position that they can request and be granted the opportunity to explain themselves in the Washington Post. Not everyone will get that and have that opportunity, and some of us will, suffer more or less in silence by having resigned. But at some point, if a critical mass of the right people are resigning, even if they don't get a chance to explain themselves in op-eds, it becomes a story in itself as the institution that the ex-Trump people sought to co-opt by joining and warping its function such that, what did Mark Short want out of this besides a paycheck? If anything, if he had any plan in mind, it would, I guess, presumably be, I would love to use the credibility of the Miller Center to redefine the history of the Trump administration. Instead of it going down in history as the worst, most incompetent, and most corrupt administration ever, wouldn't it be great for a number of reasons, not the least of which would be for me personally, because I'd be able to cash in on this later. Wouldn't it be great if it went down as a normal presidency? That's controversial.
One possibility, but let's make it more benign. This was just the rehabilitation of Mark Short.
Okay.
Why should we be rehabilitating Mark Short?
Go get therapy, dude. That's the rehabilitation.
No, we're not. You did bad things. There's one way. If you came out and told us all the bad things, that'd be a start.
That'd be therapy.
But he's not going to do that.
No. Well.
So what's the point of this?
Yeah.
He's not an academic. Sometimes you suck things up when people bring other things to the table.
Yeah, I guess
right?
So. If they had been an academic before going into the political position, I guess there'd be a possibility of an excuse.
Right. Let's say, Kissinger was a professor and he went to work for Nixon and whatever, and he did horrible things. And then he comes out, well, you got to deal with Nixon. Well, Nixon should have to explain himself, but at least he's like an academic, and there's something that you can say you're getting, and engaging with Kissinger on the horrible things he did is an interesting academic pursuit. You test him, whatever. Mark Short has nothing like that.
Oh,
nothing.
Yeah.
He was some lackey for Oliver North.
It may be a unique thing about him, but so be it. That's the way it is. He's not that thing which he's professing to be. He's not an academic, and he's not experienced, particularly in the Trump administration, because no one is. It's only 18 months old. And we know what he did when he was there for the 18 months. He lied his ass off. I mean,
exactly.
What do you do with it?
In essence, it's 3 strikes. There's nothing that's even close to qualifying this position. I've actually, guessed at this as to what happened. Mm-hmm. I know he's a graduate of the business school of UVA,
okay.
The Darden School, I think it's called.
Oh.
And I assumed some big donor at the Miller Center wanted him there.
Yeah, I would guess.
Or someone wanted to do him a favor. He had a friend in the Miller Center, said, okay, let me see what I can do.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know what that was, or, who knows?
I mean, and I'm sure if you were in UVA and the Miller Center, you know all the gossip. You probably know how exactly he got there. But Mark Short doesn't scream, boy, what a get.
Yeah, that's true. And, I mean, the definition of what he is pretty straightforward, and what you're being asked to do with him just doesn't fit that definition. I guess there's the comparison to Haldeman. I'll make a simpler comparison to an inanimate object. You're a librarian, and you are handed whatever. It doesn't even have to be something that's as bad or bad at all, like the Trump administration people, I think, come with their own baggage. You're a librarian. You are handed a Dr. Seuss book, a fantastic book that has all sorts of credentials all by itself. Very interesting to read. Everybody knows how great they are. The donor says, this goes in nonfiction, or else you lose my money. But It's a fiction book. It's a children's book. I mean, it's not even children's nonfiction. It's about Knoxes. They're not real. But look, I don't want any of your stupid academic lip about this. I thought you were open-minded, you librarians.
Yes.
Well, we are, but this is not a nonfiction book. Oh, really? Well, according to you, the establishment librarians, don't you know there's winds of change blowing across this country? People are sick and tired of your stuffy, stupid rules.
QAnon says.
Right. That's right. I think the reason you're not putting this in nonfiction is you're running a pedophile ring in the basement of this library.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Maybe we really should make room for this because we don't want people showing up with AR-15s and demanding to see our sex dungeon. We should jump out of the way on this one. No, it's not a nonfiction book. It isn't. It can't be. It never will be. No one has ever regarded it as such, and you can't learn anything non-fictional from it. It might even, and this is doing Mark Short a great service because there are some great things about Dr. Seuss books, and there's nothing great about Mark Short. I guess worse would be and maybe the more direct comparison would be somehow showing up with a QAnon book and saying, put this in nonfiction. And we'd have to be stuck saying there's nothing about this that establishes that it's nonfiction. And there would at least in that case be, well, the truth is that there really are people out there who insist that it's nonfiction. There's nobody that says that about a Dr. Seuss book, but maybe there are. Who knows? But it's a very clear delineation. This can't be put here and still be a library. This will ruin everything. If we start giving in to people and saying, all right, we just don't want any trouble, fine, it's nonfiction, then what happens to the function of a library? What else in this nonfiction section is fiction? I can't use this library anymore. Well, that's okay. We're privatizing them and handing it over to Amazon anyway.
Great.
So, I don't know.
Right. No, and you get the point in use library analogy. And, of course, here it's the academy, which has a stronger reputation for rigor and everything else than, say, journalism.
Yes.
But journalism has been ruined by this approach.
Yeah.
By the Mark Shortification of journalism.
That's true.
from not just the level of coverage, but from the people they hire.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
So CNN, Jim Acosta gets accosted at this thing last night, and he's attacked all the time. And Sarah Sanders treats him unprofessionally, to say the least, every briefing.
Yes.
Well, what do? They protest. But what else do? They hire former Trump White House people.
And former Daily Caller people.
Right.
Who now we're all sympathetic
with. I'm sure you could explore this on the other side, but I've got to run.
All right.
Thanks for letting me explore it with you.
Well, thank you. An excellent choice of topics. Appreciate hearing from you. And look forward to hearing from you again soon. Take care, Armando.
I'll be in New Orleans. I may call you from there.
Oh, okay. Excellent. That would be terrific. We would love that.
Okay. Talk to you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. He's got to run, eh? Well, okay. We'll be back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Thanks for abiding with us through the break. As you know, Armando has had to run, but he is down in New Orleans, and so I expect to get a report from one of you down in New Orleans on whether anyone spots Armando running and where he's running to. And you can follow him. Maybe he's going to register for the conference at this point, or just needs breakfast, or I don't know what. Maybe he really just needs to go run just for exercise. Okay, boy, it's making me wish I was down there. But it would be awfully difficult then to do this show, although at least the time zone thing wouldn't be as much of a problem as those West Coast Netroots nations. Anyway, I think thanks again, Armando, for bringing this issue to the fore. I don't think it would have made it to the fore of our discussions probably any time this week, though it really absolutely deserved it. And that's why I like to let everybody once in a while interject and change the direction of the show. There's so much out there that is properly regarded as extraordinarily important that just won't make it, and we just have to go with one flow of one stream of consciousness. Otherwise, that is to say, if we don't have your input, my consciousness is the only stream we get to follow. And I know that there are other stories out there, and I definitely want to get to them. And it's actually a huge relief sometimes to have somebody else say, no, hold on, change gears. Yes, I did want to get to that story. And this was the right moment to do it too, because I don't think anything explains that story quite as well as the professors themselves telling us what's up here. Because before it was just one of those controversy stories. Look what's happening at an academic institution. And, gosh, both sides or something, and we need to have, the academy open to all sides. And isn't it really true that you're being bigoted and narrow-minded by singling out Mark Short? And the answer is no. You're giving us an apple and insisting it's an orange. You're giving us a fiction book and insisting it's fiction. Could he change his stripes? He could. But why bother giving him the chance? Again, the point I really want to extract from all of this, and it's not the most important point, but it's an undercurrent to everything that we discuss. Basically, at some level, this is involved in everything. In particular about this Trump administration, but about administrations in the past as well. No doubt about it. That dressing people up with the trappings of office doesn't make them an important person, and it doesn't mean that they're the same as other people who have occupied that office in the past by virtue of their credentials and experience. And we get fooled a lot that way in this country. And to the extent that we blame things on the media or the way they present things, or we're out of time, we'll just have to leave it there, or whatever it is. There's a lot of acting that goes on in every aspect of society, and it's not exclusive to television or anything like it. I mean, we hire people for stupid jobs all the time based on this stuff. Look, you look the part. I mean, Trump is actually filling his cabinet that way, and we're supposed to be drawing from this the lesson of why you shouldn't simply do things like that. Ordinarily, there's some other stuff that goes along with it, but in Trump's case, there isn't. And that sort of emptiness, it leads to problems of all sorts. All right, let me shift gears, I guess, now that I think I've reinforced the point. Just because Mark Short wears a suit and occupied thus and such an office, he did it awfully and in a way that was unworthy of the jobs he used to hold. And so to give him this new job based on the fact that he occupied those old jobs, the titles of which carried implications with them that he has come nowhere close to fulfilling, the expectations that he's come nowhere close to fulfilling. If you work as a assistant to the president for legislative affairs, if you've occupied that office in the past, the assumption, and it was only an assumption, generally was that you had some qualifications and performed the job in a certain way. He never did that. Then, if you land at a job like this one here at the Miller Center, the assumption, and it was always an assumption, but like I said, all these things have been, in the past, you've been able to back up that assumption. Well, hold on a second. We assume that you're, of a professorial demeanor, that there's something you can bring to the academic inquiry here. Is there? Sometimes there was, sometimes there wasn't. There are surely people who got away with it in the past. And I don't think we want to, engage in whataboutism to justify Mark Short landing there. We can simply say, look, mistakes were made in the past and we're sorry about them, but there's not that much we can do about them except you point them out in a game of whataboutism, fine. Then discount all the academic inquiry that took place that included this person. Doesn't that unfairly throw out some rigorous academic inquiry by their colleagues? Yes, it does. That's the problem. Including these people in your work taints your work. You don't want it. That's why you should resign. That's why that work should not be produced. It's a contagion. It causes damage. People who are doing their best to do rigorous and honest academic inquiry will have their reputations and work besmirched by including this person in them. It is absolutely unfair. But if you want to be consistent about things and you think that that'll ruin the work going forward, and you point back to this other thing and say, this is considered a worthy academic work, isn't that now worthless? Yes, sadly it is. And thank you for making my point. Oh. Well then, something. Well, look, I don't care what you feel like. You want a moral victory, and now there's no Miller Center anymore. All right, fine, terrific. That's great. I mean, you forced that out of us, and you might even consider that to be a victory. And maybe you don't want to give in to that. Maybe the whole point of this thing, maybe they knew. I mean, you can't credit, it's certainly very difficult to credit Trump people with this sort of strategic thinking. But what if it really was something like, you know what, we hate that Miller Center. Let's get one of our people in there and then leak how bad he is, and then we'll discredit him and he'll lose that job, but that's okay because his original assignment was to undermine the credibility of the Miller Center entirely so that we could erase their body of work from serious academic study, which is fine for us because, XYZ study that they produced in the past was extraordinarily damaging to one of our political allies. That's a very backhanded way and a long walk to getting around to that, and I'm sure that was not their thinking. But if it's the outcome, what do they care, right? That's a windfall for them. And what was really happening here was just they wanted this guy to have a soft landing. I'm happy to blow that up too. But, if it cost us the entirety of the body of work of the Miller Center after a round of condemnations of Mark Short, his eventual, we hope, dismissal from the position, and then a round of whataboutism that costs us previously well-regarded academic work, well, it's not a trade I'm necessarily willing to make, but it's out there, and I guess you could let it happen. And let it serve as a warning to the next academic institution that considers something as stupid as placing one of the Mark Shorts of the world on their faculty. Look what happened to the Miller Center. Do you want that to happen to your academic institution? These people are poison, and they will kill everything you've ever done. Want to risk it on behalf of a donor? Does it make you feel like you're open-minded and you're open to both sides if you place one of these pellets of poison in your goblet? Go for it. You choose which one's the poison, right? Okay, so we'll have that game. Aha, never go up against an academic when death is on the line. Well, take your chances. All right, again, I'm going to try to switch gears. Armando mentioned to you, of course, and Greg mentioned, I think, this morning, I guess, the president is rage tweeting about the Mueller investigation. Mark Sumner covering it for the Daily Kos front page. Trump calls on Attorney General Sessions to end the Mueller investigation. Let's just take a quick look, because Mark has a knack for summing these things up pretty well. And by the photographs of Donald Trump these days that, that are used to illustrate any story. He's disgusting. I can't believe he's still alive, honestly. He's just a picture of health. So a nice photo of his leathern face, the disgusting, I don't know what liquid it is that he uses to slick back the idiotic looking, midriff length hair that he grows on the side of his head. I don't know. It's incredible that he thinks to go out in public like that. And I sometimes wonder what liquid that is, but God, I don't want to find out. Anyway, the substance, David, the substance. Donald Trump's string of Wednesday morning tweets are like the greatest hits of his false claims about Special Counsel Robert Mueller and the investigation into the Trump campaign's connections with Russia. Complaints about Peter Strzok, who was removed from the investigation more than a year ago, in there. The angry Democrats, quote unquote angry Democrats, whose count Trump has recently raised from 13 to 17, were all present and accounted for, as Mark puts it. But what's also present in Trump's morning tirade is an even greater attack on Special Counsel Robert Mueller and how his dirty work, quote unquote, his dirty work is a, quote, disgrace to USA. Also included in Trump's tweets is a call to Attorney General Jefferson Sessions to stop this capital R rigged, capital W witch, capital H hunt right now before it continues to stain our country any further. It's the most direct call for Sessions to end the investigation in months, and stacked on top of other components of Trump's tweets, which contain a laundry list of his lies about the investigation, it strikes an ominous chord. Interesting fact, Trump spends 2 tweets attacking Peter Strzok and claims that it won't work, it won't go into a Mueller report because Mueller is going to protect these guys. But the truth is that Strzok only worked for Mueller for a little over 1 month before being removed from the investigation in July of 2017. On the other hand, Trump throws in a tweet about Paul Manafort, saying, "He worked for me for a very short time." Manafort had an official role on the Trump campaign for 5 months, including taking the campaign through critical primaries and planning the Republican National Convention. And as Mark tweets, which one of these two things is the short amount of time? It's a trick question. Peter Strzok was part of Mueller's investigation for about 6 weeks. Paul Manafort was part of Trump's campaign for about 21 weeks. Trick question. Which one of these is a very short time? Well, it depends who you're asking and who you're complaining about. I guess it's a wild world out there, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's see. Let me see if I can get back on to the comments that have come in and perhaps redirections of the show. Culture of Truth early on, and when Greg was on, speaking of the Templars, he says, by the way, the Templars is a red herring. The deep state wants you to follow that. It's all about the Freemasons, right? Don't lose track of your conspiratorial suspects here. Yes, Kate Sherrill redirecting us as well to the Maria Butina story. That is all on tap. Hopefully we'll get to that one soon. And Ideologue, our D. Gordon Liddy, saying, there is no recording. by the way, Greg, of Elbridge Gary / Jerry saying his own name, so the way we pronounce gerrymandering might be correct, and I guess that's a possibility. However, it may be that there are members of the family who say, no, we always pronounced it this way. And by the way, I see that Wiktionary, which I don't know what the relationship between Wiktionary and Wikipedia is, if there is any, but they actually say in their notes, at least apocryphally, we see this passed on. Elbridge Gary's surname was pronounced with a hard G, but gerrymander is pronounced with either a hard or soft G. So I guess we split the baby on that one, and it could go either way. I don't know how much trust anybody puts in Wiki anything. But there are a couple of pronunciation guides out there, and, the truth is, after a certain amount of mispronunciation among the general public, it becomes an accepted pronunciation, but we're not really here to fight that battle. It's just interesting to note, and thank you for noting it. Let's see, moving on to a couple of other comments here. Mighty OCD, good to see you out there listening along, commenting on the various noises that our Skype made, making it sound like the Das Boot edition. I was thinking Hunt for Red October on the one ping only thing. Thelonious08 asking, who is Armando running from? That could be, feels like a bumper sticker or some sort of guerrilla advertising campaign. I like the feel of it. And Ricky saying, yeah, I'd love to be in New Orleans this week too. And if I'd known that I wouldn't be, starting my internship until after Netroots Nation 18 was over, I would have started planning and saving up for it last August. Well, life throws us some curveballs. I know. But let me tell you this. I think I don't know what the temperatures are in New Orleans this week, but I bet there are a lot of people there who wish they were in Prince Edward Island this week instead. And what a great place for Netroots Nation that would be. It's not part of the nation that we were talking about, but hey, Canada. We're supposed to be allies. We're very close. Why not bring... What about that? I wonder. I imagine that that's sort of outside of the charter, and I assume that there really is one. There's a real serious board and all of that stuff that goes along with all sorts of corporate governance. I mean, it's a real organization, Roots Nation. A lot of people work really hard, full-time, to make these things happen. I'm curious whether there's anything in the bylaws that would prohibit convening Netroots Nation in Canada. It wouldn't necessarily make any sense, but we have a pretty huge Canadian contingent, and lots of Canadians come to Netroots Nation, regardless of the fact that we don't discuss Canadian politics, typically speaking. I'm curious about that. It would be a nice break, I guess. It would certainly be fun, and I'm sure the Canadians would appreciate it. But maybe not. Maybe they would say, at this point, they say, Americans, go back. We're happy to have you once in a while, one or two at a time as visitors. But all right. Anyway, let's see. Other stories to tend to. Kate, looking back to Kate Sherrill's piece that she shared, a tweet from Melissa McOwen, who tweets as Shakes tweets, of course. All right, the Daily Beast piece was the one that you shared about Maria Butina, and there's a Daily Beast one and BuzzFeed News one. So we'll share at least one this week, if not this one, and if not necessarily right now. Let's see. I'm trying to sort of decide which direction we ought to go with the relatively short balance of today's show. And I'm not sure which one it's going to be. I mean, we've already shared the Murray Wass story, although there's so much more I want to say about that one. But the fact that we've spent some time on it leads me to think, all right, well, maybe we'll leave that one for now. And then there's a really long read that needs to be put on the record. I don't know exactly which direction to go with. Why don't we then say, all right, let's catch up on Maria Butina by looking at the Daily Beast piece that Kate shared. And this is going to be a long and involved one, too. And I saw a very interesting tweet about it that we could also, well, certainly we'll discuss later in the week, but it came from Sarah Kenzier, who's always on the ball about these things. Let me get to this piece, though, from the Daily Beast. Betsy Woodruff wrote this one. Accused Russian spy, that's Butina, told American CEO, send cash to Moscow. That seems pretty odd, as does the mismatch, let's say, right up front in age between the two of them, because they're juxtaposed in a composite photo here. Maria Butina and who is the very ancient-looking CEO we're discussing. I don't recognize his face immediately, but, looks like a weird relationship happening here. Maria Butina, the accused Russian operative, didn't just allegedly cultivate the National Rifle Association on behalf of the Kremlin. The 29-year-old Russian national also braced one of America's best-known businessmen, he's not known to me, pushing him to increase his investments in his bank in Moscow, a bank that was also facing financial collapse. Ooh, bail my bank out. The encounter, detailed to the Daily Beast by multiple sources, paints a more detailed picture than previously known of the actions of the alleged foreign agent in the United States. It indicates that courting American politicos wasn't her only mission. She also took a keen interest in contentious, complex matters involving international finance. I don't know if there was any more interest in it than give me some money, but okay. All while attempting to influence the primary financier of what would become Washington's most Trump-friendly foreign policy think tank. Well. Butina, who is currently incarcerated, has pleaded not guilty to charges that she worked as a covert operative for the Kremlin, infiltrating the NRA and American conservative politics through a charm offensive that included, according to U.S. prosecutors, a series of sexual favors. And what favors they were. I would think it's even more evidence that she had a broader agenda. She was doing other work for the Kremlin, says Evelyn Farkas, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and a former Pentagon official focused on Russia. It's interesting that she was not only seeking to provide ways for the Russian government to put money into the U.S. political system in order to influence our election and the electoral outcome, but that she clearly was also interested in luring American money to Russia. The story starts in June of 2008 with legendary American businessman Maurice Hank Greenberg. This is no legend I am aware of, but okay. Well, he's the former chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. I mean, that would make him a fairly famous person. Not something I would pay attention to necessarily, but and the one-time CEO of insurance and financial services giant AIG. And now it's starting to make more sense. Greenberg's Star Russia Investments 3, Roman numeral 3. It's Star, S-T-A-R-R, like Kenneth Starr, interestingly enough. Star Russia Investments 3 bought 20% of Investorg Bank, a Russian bank. Banki.ru reported that the fund Greenberg headed, the fund being, that's what Star Russia Investments 3 is. Remember that lots of private equity, venture capital, hedge fund type funds take names like that. So we're familiar with that from back in our Mitt Romney investigative days. Okay, so let's see. That fund headed, that Greenberg headed, paid about $100 million for its share of the bank, Investorg Bank, I-N-V-E-S-T, Invest, T-O-R-G, Investorg, double T, Bank, B-A-N-K, in case you're looking it up. In August of 2009, Star invested an additional $8 million in the bank, according to court filings in the state of New York. The next year, Investorg Bank chairman Vladimir Gudkov boasted that business was booming. The bank was looking to expand into Siberia, the big Siberian market, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine, he told Interfax. He sounded proud that Greenberg's first foray into investment in the Russian banking sector would be with his bank, but within a few years things went south, which is not a bad idea if you're in Siberia. But okay. In December of 2014, according to court filings, the Russian central bank started auditing the bank's books. Lawyers for Star said Gudkov and others in the bank engaged in egregious self-dealing, frittering away tens of millions of dollars. I'll bet that probably did happen. Not unusual is what it sounds like among the oligarchs of Russia. The Russian government auditors concluded that by the end of 2014, the bank was insolvent. What do you have to do to get in trouble with Russian regulators? Probably not give money to Putin or not do his bidding in some way. In April of 2015, while that audit was still underway, Butina and Alexander Torshin, a Russian central bank official, later accused of money laundering and sanctioned by the U.S. government, attended a private discussion of Russia's financial situation at the Center for the National Interest. According to Reuters, Greenberg participated in that meeting. Unlike most Washington foreign policy think tanks, which are generally hawkish, the Center for the National Interest is known for facilitating conversations between Kremlin officials and American foreign policy leaders. It is viewed as a home for the foreign policy restraint that the president himself seems to favor. That guy who's wearing the costume and sitting in the office. The center's honorary chairman, former Secretary of State and accused war criminal Henry Kissinger, back in our show again for the second time, is one of Vladimir Putin's closest international confidants. The two have met 17 times over the years. I didn't even know that. Kissinger also advised Donald Trump to move closer to Russia. Wow. As a way of containing China's rise on the global stage. Interesting. Now, that's another interesting and competing theory to my own somewhat wilder theory about actual, honest-to-God political union facilitated by white supremacists. I wouldn't think, as much as disgusting as Kissinger is, I doubt very much whether that would be on his agenda, but, he can justify more or less the same relationship in traditional conservative terms. That is, you need to forge a closer bond with Russia as a way of, as I said, containing China's rise on the global stage. Interesting. Definitely going to have to keep that one in mind. Board member Richard Burt is also a lobbyist for Russian old giant. Really? Is that what that's supposed to say? For Russian old giant. Gazprom. I don't know why old. Okay. John Huntsman, Trump's ambassador to Russia, previously served on the center's board, and David Keene, whom Butina appears to have cultivated, is also a board member. Butina also wrote for the center's magazine. So, okay, she's all over the place in this one. People close to the center have risen to prominence in the Trump administration, most notably Alexander Alden, who was a senior fellow at the center for 7 months. Wow, a whopping 7 months in 2017, according to his LinkedIn page. That's all it takes, I guess, to make the right connection. Alden then left the center for the Pentagon, and in May of 2018, he became Director of Defense Policy and Strategy on the National Security Council, where he currently works. So just to be clear about this, I mean, I should probably look into the center, well, what is it called? The Center for the National Interest probably bears some scrutiny, but again, what great cover. A little bit like the National Prayer Breakfast, not something anybody really thought to investigate until you realized, well, it would be a good thing to have a think tank that fosters peaceful relations between the United States and Russia, or even if it were to go back long enough, peaceful relations between the United States and the Soviet Union. That's cover that Trump uses all the time. It's a good thing if we get along. We're superpowers. We should be, why do you want war with them? You won't want tension and war. You want peaceful cooperation. And, the Kissinger excuse is a traditionally, one that would resonate with traditionalists. It's not that we love Russia. It's that strategically we're going to befriend the enemy of our enemy, so to speak, and contain China. It's not working at containing China, but that's not necessarily their fault. Whoops. How did the alarm get back on for that one? Nice and loud. Anyway, it's time. That means it's time for us to give up on trying to cram this story in. But I'm glad that it at least launched us into a new area of understanding, if not belief, in the possible goals and why even conservative foreign policy traditionalists, that is to say, who adhere to a very specific sort of illegal meddling in other countries and other countries illegally meddling in our affairs, Henry Kissinger, would sign on to a policy like that. And before we exit the discussion of this article, I am interested in what we learned here, that the existence of a think tank aimed at closer cooperation between the United States and Russia, for whatever reason, is also a launching pad into government positions like one at the Pentagon or like one at the National Security Council. And I know this is a very tired old game, but once again, we'll just bring this one up. Imagine for a moment that a Democratic president filled positions in the Pentagon and the National Security Council with people culled from a think tank dedicated to closer cooperation with the dreaded Russians. Oops, you know what? That has screwed up our music just by adding that in there. We'll exit during the correct time anyway, hopefully. And, it'll be time to sign off. Oh, my goodness. You know what? It's going to ruin everything. I'm going to have to give up the microphone here. And having conducted that thought experiment, now hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Coming to you about a minute late this time because I ruined everything with stupid sound effects. How about that? Well, thanks very much, Justice. Over to you. Take it away and enjoy, everybody. And if you're down in New Orleans, I might as well use this extra time to wish you well for Netroots Nation 2018. Wish I could be there with you.